Right now, you probably have a job, a schedule, a boss, a deadline, an alarm clock that decides when your day begins. You assume this is just what human life looks like, but for almost the entire span of human existence, none of that existed. No jobs, no bosses, no 9 to 5. So what did your ancestors actually do with their time? You'd expect the answer to be grim, endless labor, a desperate hunt for food from sunrise to sunset, just to survive another day. But the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, people worked less than you do right now. In the 1960s, anthropologist Marshall Sahlins studied hunter-gatherer societies and coined a phrase that shook the field of economics. He called them the original affluent society, not because they had more stuff, because they had more time. Sahlins pointed to research on groups like the hoansi of the Kalahari, where adults spent roughly 15 to 20 hours a week securing food. Compare that to your average work week. You are, by this measure, working almost twice as hard as a hunter-gatherer from 40,000 years ago. So what filled the rest of those hours? Rest, socializing, storytelling, tool repair, naps, long unhurried conversations that had no productivity goal attached to them at all. Anthropologist Richard Lee, who spent years directly observing the hoansi in the 1960s, documented daily life in painstaking detail. His field notes describe long stretches of leisure woven between short bursts of purposeful activity. There was no concept of clocking in. There was only the rhythm of need. Hungry? Go gather. Not hungry? Do something else entirely. Here's where it gets stranger. This wasn't laziness, it was efficiency. Prehistoric humans didn't need to stockpile wealth because there was nowhere to put it and no future currency to save it for. Food spoiled. Shelter was temporary. Status wasn't measured in possessions. So once your needs were met for the day, working more provided almost no additional benefit. Why labor for surplus when surplus can't be banked? Think about how different that is from your own relationship with work. You often keep working long after your basic needs are met, chasing savings, promotions, security for a future that hasn't arrived yet. That's not a personal flaw. It's the result of living inside an economic system built on accumulation, something your prehistoric ancestors never had to navigate. But if they weren't working 8-hour shifts, what exactly filled a typical day? Mornings often began with movement. Foraging groups would travel to known food sources, sometimes walking for hours, but rarely rushing. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes, who studied the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last populations still practicing a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, observed something surprising about who did the most consistent daily foraging. Older women, specifically grandmothers, often provided a steady, reliable source of food for the group by digging tubers, a pattern now known as the grandmother hypothesis. It suggests that human longevity itself may have evolved partly because older individuals who weren't raising infants directly became essential providers, freeing younger mothers to care for children. That single detail rewrites a huge assumption. Prehistoric daily life wasn't a rigid division between hunters and everyone else. It was a flexible, cooperative system where different people contributed based on skill, age, and season, not job titles. Afternoons often slowed considerably. Camps became social hubs. Tools were mended. Children learned by watching and mimicking adults rather than through formal instruction. There was no school bell, no curriculum, just constant embedded learning happening in real time. Evenings, as you may already know, belonged to the fire circle, where stories, myths, and shared history were passed down out loud, generation after generation. Here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. This slower, less structured rhythm wasn't an inferior version of modern life waiting to be improved. In many ways, it was remarkably well suited to human psychology. Studies on stress in modern hunter-gatherer societies, including work referenced by Sahlins and later researchers, consistently show lower reported anxiety around scarcity because immediate needs were usually met quickly and directly without months of planning, saving, or worrying about instability far in the future. Compare that to the average modern day. You wake to an alarm, not your body's natural rhythm. You spend hours doing tasks disconnected from any immediate, tangible outcome. You worry about money for a future that may be decades away. None of this made you weak or foolish. It made you a product of a system profoundly different from the one your brain evolved to navigate. So why did any of this change? Around 10,000 years ago, agriculture reorganized everything. Fixed land meant fixed obligations. Crops needed constant tending, harvest needed storing, and stored surplus needed defending. For the first time, humans had something worth hoarding, and something worth working relentlessly to protect. Anthropological research on early agricultural societies consistently shows increased working hours compared to earlier foraging groups, alongside rising social stratification. Jobs, in the modern sense, were born from surplus and scarcity working together, not from some natural human need to be constantly, endlessly productive. You inherited that system fully formed. You never had to invent it, question it, or agree to it. It was simply already here when you arrived, presented as the only reasonable way to live. So the next time you find yourself exhausted at the end of a long workday, remember this: your body isn't broken. Your mind isn't lazy. You are simply operating inside a structure that emerged relatively recently in the long story of what it means to be human, one built on accumulation rather than immediate need. Right now, you probably have a job, a schedule, a boss, a deadline, an alarm clock that decides when your day begins. But somewhere beneath all of that, a much older rhythm is still quietly asking whether any of it was ever truly necessary.